What is up, everybody? It is 6:22 Central Time. That means we got about an hour until the Sunday night kickoff. So, all the morning and afternoon games have wrapped up, and it's time to do a little recap of the slate. Okay? A lot of these morning games, I felt kind of went as expected. The Giants, Commanders, Cardinals, Saints, Raiders, Pats, Bengals, Browns, Jags, Panthers all kind of went as expected. Um, I think the Commanders looked pretty good, especially defensively. Although I don't know how many people had high hopes for the Giants offense, but they did struggle. And the defense of the Giants, which people respectively had high hopes for, the Washington did what they wanted to eventually. I think Debo looked good, and some people saw a potential regression in the Commanders going into year 2 for Jaden, but if they can look like this and stay healthy, I think they should continue to be a playoff contender like they were last year. Cardinals Saints, um, there were a lot of games on this morning. This is one that was on a monitor and got forgot about a few times, but Marvin Harrison looked good. He had the big connection to him early, and they got in the end zone. Defensively, the Cardinals did what they needed to do to not let the Saints put up enough points to win. I think Rattler slung it around pretty nice. Kamara did Kamara things, always looks good. There was the one pass that Jawan Johnson should have came down with the Saints tight end, 83, that could have potentially tied the game, and then the ball that the game ended on, Rattler to Olave, really didn't have a chance. It looked like he was pretty much out of bounds already. So that's a tough loss for the Saints, and kind of just an example of that no matter how bad your team is, everyone's going to try hard week one. Raiders Pats, this is honestly one of the more disappointing appearances, debuts for a team in the Patriots. Um, they really just couldn't run the ball at all. So Drake May had to sling it around as much as he could. I think he threw it like 45 times. Um, and it didn't work for him. So when you don't have a run game established and the other team knows you're having to throw it 40 plus times, it kind of limits what you're able to do because defensively they can just game plan for the pass. And honestly, it was the same side on the Raiders. They didn't run the ball very well, but Geno slinging it actually worked for him, mainly because of Brock Bowers, who did leave with an injury, but hopefully it's nothing too serious because he's on my fantasy team, and that would be a big blow. So, Bengals Browns, another game I felt kind of went as expected. I didn't think it would be that close. Honestly, the Browns should have won this game, but I did think it was going to be a close game to where the Bengals were gonna have to just pull it out. They got lucky winning this game. It also shows the Browns roster, aside from their quarterback, is solid. I think a lot of football fans know that. They have great defensive pieces. They have great offensive pieces. It's just that the quarterback on a day in, day out basis is not where it needs to be to compete with teams like the Bengals, even who defensively are still pretty suspect. And it looked like the O line had some struggles today, which could just be a Miles Garrett thing. Hopefully, it's not a real red flag if you're a Bengals fan. Jags Panthers was obviously a weird game with the weather delay. Um, I think the biggest differences between these two teams, besides the big run from ETN, uh, was basically the offensive play calling from Liam Cohen. I think if these two teams matched up last year, it probably would have ended in a game-winning field goal from one team. It'd be a 13-10 game. And because of the creativity within the Jaguars offense, it allowed them to actually move the ball down the field and put up, which wasn't a lot of points. I think it was a 23-point win from the Jags. Um, but like I said last year, without Liam Cohen, they had zero creativity, no motion, no reverse trick plays to Brian Thomas Jr. So I think offensively they looked good, but their quarterback, I don't think Trevor looked anywhere near what you'd hope. So hopefully they can just get away with the win and get Trevor locked in. Those are all kind of the games that were as expected in the morning slate. The two great games I saw were the Steelers Jets and Bucks Falcons game. All four of these teams moving forward should feel pretty great about the week 1 performance, especially the Jets. Um I mean, putting up 30 points with Justin Fields as your starting quarterback's got to feel good. And any Justin Fields hater definitely got pretty silenced today. He made a lot of great plays. Obviously, the biggest play of the game was the Garrett Wilson, Jalen Ramsey beat down. That was awesome to watch. The big turnover is kind of where the Steelers took momentum. They scored and were down still after the Jalen Warren touchdown and the turnover to get the ball back in the red zone, touchdown to Calvin Austin, take the lead. That's just things you can't let happen, and is going to be a deciding factor when the other team doesn't turn the ball over. But overall, for the Jets, definitely a moral victory. Even though in sports it's kind of like a frustrating and shitty thing to talk about as a moral victory, this is the definition of one. Um Brees Hall looked really good when he got the ball in his hands, which I think if you're a Jets fan, you know that when Brees Hall is healthy, he makes plays. On the Steelers side of things, defensively, they didn't look very good, which may be more of the result on the Jets side of things is just the lackluster defense from the Patriots, but we'll find that out in a couple weeks. But Aaron Rodgers took a turn to he looked OG right there. He looked pretty vintage. He had some good connections to Metcalf. I think him and Calvin Austin will definitely be a primary connection during the season. I liked the touches from Jalen Warren, and I think this was really important for both of these teams to start out with a victory. I think that's why this game was so competitive. And hopefully, if you're a Steelers fan, you can keep this momentum going forward. Um, the other game I mentioned that was a good game was Bucks Falcons. A weird game, but a good game. Penix played pretty well. He made the plays when he needed to. I think he played pretty clutch overall. There were some mistakes, but it happens. It definitely was tough for them to lose Drake London towards the end of the game because there was a specific play up the sideline that Antoine Winfield broke up, which was Drake London's replacement. And I think if that was Drake London, they probably make that catch, probably get in position to score a touchdown instead of trying to get the game tying field goal that Koo missed. So that's kind of an interesting way that things played out. Um, One thing I wanted to mention on this game was the weird kicking theme. This is kind of an all week 1 kicking theme. Was the missed extra point by the Bucks on the touchdown at the end of the game would have went up 4 instead of going up 3. So it gives Atlanta the chance to get a game tying field goal. They only had a minute left in regulation. And because they were down 3, able to get a chance at a field goal, they go for the field goal kick and miss it, lose the game. This was somewhat similar to what happened with the Browns, where they would have been tied 17-17, but because their kicker missed an extra point, they had the ball at the 20-ish yard line, had to kick a field goal, and he missed, and they're still down 1, and they lose the game 17-16. Also, similarly, in the Chiefs game, Harrison Butker misses the extra point, which makes it where later in the game, after the Chargers score a touchdown, instead of being up 8 after the 2-point conversion. They're up 9, two possession game makes it a lot harder for the Chiefs to come back. So it was a weird week for kickers. I think that's maybe something that we should be reminded of is that week 1 is going to be weird for some positions, and this week it was the kicker. Sometimes you think it's the quarterback, the defense, they start slow, but seemed like kickers this week had a tough time. Um but last thing on the Bucks Falcons, similar to the Jets, I feel like the Falcons should feel pretty good from this performance. Not a lot of obviously a lot of things to improve on, but not a lot of things to be really down on, especially if you're a Falcons fan. Penix looked good. That's all you really want. And for the absolute dumpster fire of the morning slate was the Dolphins. Okay. Now, this game is one I wanted to really talk about because I thought the Dolphins would win this game. I thought it would be close and competitive. I respect the Colts as a team, but I feel they're pretty mid. All right. Daniel Jones looked good, but one thing about the Dolphins in the past, yes, people don't take them seriously. People are pretty down on them coming into this year. But one thing about the Dolphins is offensively against bad teams, they score points. We saw them drop 70 against the Broncos a couple years ago. We saw Tua lead the league in passing. They should not be getting blown out by average teams. This game, although you may be down on the Dolphins going into this year, this game for the Dolphins historically in the Tua, Tyreek, Waddle era, this is an anomaly. They should not be down 30-0 against the Colts. And because of that, this is bad. There's change coming almost assuredly unless somehow in the next 2 weeks they have 2 blowout wins. This could be a very early firing from Mike McDaniel because a lot of people going into the season had him on the hot seat. There really just is an excuse for there's no excuse for looking this bad week 1. Another point, week 1 is a lot different than say this exact game happened in week 7. It is not as bad as it happening in week 1 because you have the entire offseason to game plan for your week 1 opponent. Obviously, getting blown out by the Colts in week 7 isn't good either. But the fact that this was your game 1 opponent, your game plan for the entire offseason, of course, you don't just plan for one game the whole offseason, but it's a real statement of how potentially dysfunctional this season is going to be for Miami. On the Colts side of things, I'm not even really incredibly impressed. This is kind of what I figured the Colts were going to be, a pretty decent team. I like the pieces they have in Michael Pittman, Tyler Warren, Jonathan Taylor, got a good O-line. Daniel Jones seems to be able to make something happen. He's a veteran at this point. He's in the league still for a reason. But honestly, it looked like the Colts could have won this game with Anthony Richardson playing, with anybody at quarterback. They would have probably won this game with Will Levis. Yeah, if you're a Dolphins fan, things are looking very, very gloomy. Okay. Those are all the morning slate games. Going to the afternoon slate, I think we should start with another team who similarly had a very awful performance, devastating day for the Lions. Okay. I predicted that the Packers would win this game. I also feel that the Lions going into this year should not have as much hype as they do because Ben Johnson, even just watching the Lions the last 2 years, you can see that the innovation offensively from the Lions was a lot having to do with coaching and using the personnel they had to the best possible availability. Now that Ben Johnson is gone, it seems that the offense has really regressed. Now, the Packers defense looked really good today. They were flying around. Micah made a difference in this defense. But I think with Ben Johnson still there, if they still had their same coordinators, the Lions are competing in this game. And obviously there were some untimely uh, turnovers. The interception before the half that Jared Goff had really was brutal because they could have. That's a big swing point in points. I think they got a field. I don't think. I think they didn't get any points off the turnover, but it would have made it a one possession game if they did score. Even if it was just a field goal, I think it would have been 9-17, or a touchdown would have been 13-17. So you can point to certain plays where if this happened there, if this happened there, it would have been closer. But offensively, it looked rough for the Lions. Jared Goff looked extremely uncomfortable, which has historically been a theme for him throughout his career. Not on the road. I guess Green Bay today probably wasn't bad weather, but it's not a dome. And he had pressure. So if you're a Lions fan, you got to really hope that this is not a vision to come for this season. And as a Packers fan, I don't think that you could have possibly written a better script for game one. I mean, if you want a 40-point blowout, sure, but that's pretty fucking greedy. Um, Other than just stomping a team, this is about as good as it gets. Especially with the drama around Micah Parsons, which pretty much ended once the trade happened. But if he were to not have a great performance, if the Packers were to lose, that could be still a topic around the team. But that is completely gone after this. And they're only going to get more and more hype as an NFC contender, a division winner, almost assuredly by the football fandom at this point. And probably going to have a lot of people saying Green Bay is taking the NFC. There were two, I guess the Broncos Titans game was pretty close. It was really competitive, but it felt like the Broncos were always in control. The Titans defense was giving Bo Nix hell, okay? Bo Nix did not look good at all today. Which I do want to say is more to do with just how good the Titans defense is. Similar to last year, the Titans defense was just it gets after it. But the quarterback was doing a 3 and out every single possession, and when your defense is constantly on the field throughout a game, they're going to deteriorate, and by the end of the game, the good defense is eliminated. In the first half, and honestly throughout 3.5 quarters, Cam Ward was doing what he needed to do to utilize that great defense and just move the ball enough to put points up. They were getting field goals, and that was it, but it was working. They even took the lead, I believe, 12-10 coming out of halftime because of the turnover. Um, One thing on those turnovers, they were ugly. Okay, the first interception was more of a play made by the defender for the Titans, so you're not going to put too much blame on Bo there. The fumble was pretty bad, held the ball for way too long, and the second interception was awful. That was really bad. Um, Definitely one big red flag were those sacks that Cam Ward took, back to back sacks, getting the ball at around the 30, takes him out of field goal range, have to punt. They even get another chance after that on an incredible 4th-and-1 stop by the Titans. So you might be a little bit disappointed as a Titans fan with this debut. It wasn't great, but I do think there are things to build off of, especially if he can get better chemistry with some of his receivers. Him and Calvin Ridley never got super connected. I think he's targeting his name's like Elick, number 5, targeting him a lot. Hopefully they can get a good connection. Maybe get some help from Pollard out of the backfield. They couldn't really establish much of a run game. So if you are going to put any blame on someone, it probably would be mostly Cam Ward that limited the Titans from being able to win this game. But it's his first start. against a Broncos defense, which is pretty tough. That's another thing I think we have to mention. The Cam Ward's not going against any scrubs, okay? Broncos defense is pretty legit, and it's why they won this game. Bo Nix is not the reason the Broncos won this game. We should just put it that way. I think it was pretty interesting. The 4th and 2 call that Sean Payton made, kicking that field goal to go 13-12 instead of trying to put it in the end zone, kind of showed that he knew the Broncos could take the game, just managing it and not making too many mistakes. Overall, Broncos are lucky to pull out this win. If Cam Ward didn't make those mistakes with the big sacks and could have at least did a little something more with the offense, better chemistry with his receivers, I think the Titans take this game. To the two real close competitive games were the Niners Seahawks and the Houston Texans LA Rams game. I'm going to talk about the Rams Houston game first. Houston's defense looked insane in the first half. Lost Stingley for a bit, came back in. Hopefully that's nothing major. I mean, they looked insane throughout the whole game. The defense of Houston is going to be a really tough unit to go against. And the Rams offense was struggling because they couldn't really establish any run game at all with Kyren, and Puka going in and out of the game made it where their offense was pretty stuck. I think this game really highlighted how reliant they are on Puka creating openings for the rest of their offense. So hopefully he can stay healthy throughout the season and the Rams can be a competitive team, because I think a lot of people thought, oh, no Stafford going into the year, the Rams might struggle to be a contender. If they don't have Puka, it seems like they might not score a point. And on the other side of the game, Houston's offense looked even worse. There just seemed to be no chemistry, no flow. They couldn't get any rhythm. It seemed like CJ Stroud had to make crazy dimes every time to move the sticks or resort to running it for first downs just to get into a field goal range. So that's definitely going to be a tough spot for them to develop throughout the season. But if this defense can hold up and stay the same, I still am taking Houston super seriously because I know CJ Stroud is that guy. It was honestly the offensive line and the lack of separation in weapons that held them back from winning this game, because CJ Stroud played well. He did have questionable throws, but it was more it felt like forced, in which he had to do these things to give them a chance to compete. And then coming out of the second half is when the Rams kind of started to look more like the Rams. They made some offensive adjustments to move the ball down the field and put more points up. And that defensive play at the end to seal the game is absolutely textbook. Punching the ball out, Pac-Man would be so proud seeing something like that. And the Rams are built like that. This is a classic Rams win, doing it as a team. If everyone can stay healthy for the Rams, similar to kind of how I feel about Washington, they should be taken pretty serious as a contender. Puka, Stafford, if they're healthy, the offense should flow. I think especially if they can establish the run game like they usually do under McVay, they'll let loose a little more. This might even be the toughest defense they face all regular season. Now, for another super competitive game that I watched pretty closely in the afternoon slate is the Seahawks Niners. All right. Seahawks were making it pretty difficult for Purdy in that first half, but he did look very comfortable. It just didn't seem like there were a lot of options for him. It was a tough special team situation for him with the missed field goal and the blocked field goal, to where they were trying to come back for most of the game. And the Seahawks were playing well. They weren't making any mistakes. They were also moving the ball down the field. It seems like Sam Darnold and JSN have a pretty great connection. Um, Unfortunately, Ayuk is going to need to come back if the Niners are going to not feel like they're pulling off wins in a gimmicky style, especially Ayuk and Kittle. I felt like a lot of the big swing plays that happened for the Niners were pretty lucky. A lot of those chunk plays to Pearsall, I think, can be limited. And if that's their biggest plan in the offense, they're going to have to look elsewhere. I do like what we saw from Christian McCaffrey today. Glad that he suited up, got out there. When Purdy is slinging it and just kind of throwing YOLO balls, I don't like it as much. And it felt like that's what he was trying to do at the end to pull out the win. And he did get the ball to Pearsall that got him into the red zone to where then they got the lob ball to the backup tight end that should have been a pick. So the Niners came away with this win, and I like the way Purdy played. I think he looked good. I do think mentally he got to a place later in the game where he felt like he had to sling it, and that's not what he should do. It almost and probably should have cost them the game, but at the same time, Seattle made mistakes, and with the Bosa rush into a sack fumble that wasn't a sack, it's things like that that are kind of gimmicky. Of course, Bosa's a great player, but winning the game like that, it feels good, but it doesn't feel um, replicable for the Niners. Um, there was also an interception by Purdy that was really, really bad. The one over the middle, I think he was going to Jennings. He probably just didn't see the guy. Hopefully, he just didn't see the guy because that was a tough interception to throw right there. The Seahawks, though, similar to how I felt about the two morning slate games of Jets Steelers and Bucks Falcons, the losing side shouldn't really feel too down about what their performance was. If you're the Seahawks, you definitely would have liked to get more points on the board today, and you definitely probably could have had more points on the board today. But what you saw from Sam Darnold shows that you'll be a competing roster, a competing team. I honestly, if the Niners didn't have such an easy schedule, I would like the Seahawks coming out of the NFC West. I think the Niners might, if they're gonna keep getting gimmicky wins throughout the season, I don't know how serious I could take them as like a true contender. I feel like offensively, if they're gonna have Russell, or sorry, if they're gonna have Brock Purdy try and play like prime Russell Wilson, things are gonna go pretty poor for him. But he does look comfortable when he is in the pocket. I just think the throws he makes aren't smart. The triple coverage to Pearsall, it's just not gonna work every time. And Tariq Woolen getting mossed by a backup no-name tight end, like how often are you gonna rely on that? If you're a Seahawks fan. Overall, the first weekend afternoon morning slate games were pretty good. Not a whole lot of duds, honestly, besides the Lions, Packers, and the what was that game? Colts Dolphins. Hopefully the Sunday night game can be pretty exciting. We got two former MVPs going at it. Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Baltimore, Buffalo. I like Baltimore in that one, but honestly, it's kind of hard. You can't go wrong picking either team here. So, wait, let me do a little score prediction. What do I see? 27-23 Baltimore. All right. Maybe I'll do a recap after tonight's game. We'll see. What do we got? 25 minutes till kickoff. See y'all there.